have a kids doctor appointment that I'll jump off at the end, and Senator Kushner will take over. So I just want to let you know in advance. I'm not ducking, not ducking you. And I don't know, Senator Kushner, do you have any opening remarks, or would you prefer we could just jump right into the presentation? All right, great. We're so lucky to have our DAS folks with us today. We really appreciate your time and your expertise and all the work you've put into this program, and are really excited for you to share an update with everyone here today. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative Leeper, Senator Kushner, for having us here today. My name is Eleanor Michael, and I'm a Deputy Commissioner here at the Department of Administrative Services. As Representative Leeper mentioned, we are coming back from a summer hiatus, so we thought we would just start off today by reminding everybody of where we are and how we got here, providing a little bit of background on the program, on the funding we've received to date, and the second round of grants that we just posted that opportunity. So again, on behalf of Commissioner Gilman, I just want to thank the governor, the legislature, and all the education stakeholders who made this program a possibility. We're really excited to be able to administer it. And I hope we did share with the members of this task force. I hope that you got the invite to a webinar that we held last Wednesday. That was the full version of our webinar. It is posted on our DAS website. Today we'll be doing an abbreviated version of that webinar for you, but I just wanted to share to make sure everybody knew that the full webinar is available on our website, as well as all of the slides from that webinar and our complete guidance document on this program. So by way of background, as you all know, the pandemic exposed a significant need to have modernized air filtration units in schools. This legislation was passed in 2022 for the first time to create and fund the HVAC indoor air quality program. And then further legislation was passed last year in the 2023 session to add additional funds to that program and make some tweaks around the edges. The first round of grants was announced by DAS in the spring of 2023. And this summer, we announced our second round of grants was opened, and the deadline for application to those grants is December 31st of this year, 2023. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is this second round of grants. We do anticipate making a third round of grants in fiscal year 2025. So just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that that opportunity is coming down the pike as well. So as I said, just want to talk a little bit about our funding summary today, because there's been a lot of money put into this program. We're very grateful for that. First of all, in the 2022 legislative session, there was funding provided for fiscal year 23. We received $75 million in bonding dollars and $75 million in federal ARPA dollars, for a grand total of $150 million received that year. Then last year, those funds were supplemented with additional funds for both fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025. We received $150 million in 2024 and another $150 million for fiscal year 2025, for a grand total of $375 million in bonding, $75 million in ARPA, and $450 million total put into this program to date. Next, we just wanted to talk a little bit about how that funding has been spent. So like I said, we announced our first round of grants in the spring of this year. That first round of grants, we sent out $56 million, and that was all out of our bonding dollars. So we had $19 million left over in bonding. We did not touch any of our federal ARPA dollars in that first round. So we had $75 million in our ARPA dollars left over, for a grand total of $94 million left over from that first round, which we were able to carry forward into this year. So I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware that we plan to spend down those dollars. It is our goal to get all of these funds out to your districts. And so to the extent that we do have money left over after any given round of grant, it is our intent to, with the approval of the legislature, to carry those dollars forward. So we did carry that $94 million forward. So again, here's a quick round of funding for the second round of the program. Again, you'll see that 94 million carry forward in that first row there. And then you'll recall we had the 150 million in bonding in FY24. And again, we did have the 150 million in FY25, but we cannot access those dollars yet as we are not yet in that fiscal year. So the total amount that we had for this second round of funding is 244 million. That's comprised of 169 million dollars in bonding and $75 million in ARPA. That is the summary, I believe, of our funding summary. Next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Melissa Conway, to provide a quick summary of application information and talk about some changes that we have made in this second round of grants. Melissa is our Director of Special Projects here at the Department of Administrative Services. Melissa?
Thanks, everyone, or thanks, Eleanor, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to join you all today and share some of this information. As Eleanor mentioned, I'm Melissa Conway, Director of Special Projects in the Commissioner's Office here at DAS. As Eleanor mentioned, we recently hosted a webinar last Wednesday for the grant program, and we wanted to share some additional information about the application and the application process. So on this first slide here, we just wanted to put a reminder that the eligible applicants for this grant program per the statute are local boards of education, regional boards of education, and regional educational service centers. Similar to our Chapter 173 grant programs, which are the priority list and non-priority list, the superintendent for the district will submit the application in Core CT. And note that districts must submit one application per project. So if a district is replacing a condenser at one school and completing a boiler upgrade at another school, those would be two separate applications. And then we also wanted to put this information here that the applications should really address the HVAC system or other improvements to indoor air quality. And so we've received many questions about what the other improvements to indoor air quality means, such as air purifiers. And while we'll consider these as part of the grant program, if they're peer reviewed, such as by the CDC, DPH, or ASHRAE, we strongly encourage the application to address the underlying HVAC system. And this is because the CDC has put forward guidance that one of the foundational strategies to improving indoor air quality in a school is to ensure that the HVAC system in itself is maximizing ventilation. And then the other improvements are supplemental to that. So that's just a little bit of information or primary application information. But next we'll move into some information on the eligible project timelines. So there are two timeframes that projects can fall into. Districts or applicants can submit for projects that were already completed or projects that will be completed in the future. Pursuant to state statute, projects must be completed by the end of the next calendar year following the year of grant commitment. So, for example, if a district receives a grant commitment for a project in March 2024, the project must be complete by December 31, 2025. We've had a few questions about this timeline, and while this requirement is per state statute, the commissioner may make extensions upon showing of a good cause. So there are a few changes from the first round. The first is that applicants may use federal funds for their local share, and I can give a more detailed example of that in our next slide. The next is that we're requiring a funding authorization letter for all applications, and this will have information on the funding source, the amount, and the approval to use that funding source for the specific project. And so this will make it easier for DAS to match the amounts in the application and to process the application. Because one of the main issues in the first round is that applicants didn't include the cost of their project, or the total project amount was unclear, or the local share amount was unclear. DAS cannot issue grants for projects in which we don't know the costs. We're also requiring a risk assessment questionnaire, which is included in our program guidance. I believe it's in Appendix D. And this will help us to determine the funding source for an application, whether it's the federal funds or bond funds, as Eleanor mentioned earlier. We have the two funding sources, and it's also required for the federal funds. We'll also provide a formal notice of grant award, which will include some key information such as grant award start date, end date, and basic terms and conditions, which will require quarterly financial and programmatic reporting. And part of the reason for that is because we want to be able to track the progress of these projects and to understand that the impact that these projects are having on the communities or school districts. And so all awardees will be required to complete this reporting despite the source of funding, whether it's bond funds or federal funds. So as I mentioned in the last slide, one of the key changes is that applicants may use federal funds for their local share. So we want to provide an example of this. So in the last round, or the first round, or round one of the HVAC indoor air quality grant program, the federal funds were applied to the total project cost before the state calculated the local share. So in this example, if the total project costs were $100 and the district had $20 in federal funds, then that $20 would reduce the total project cost to $80. And then the reimbursement rate, or listed here as the match percent, would be applied to that $80. So in this example, the state reimbursement amount is $40 and the local match amount is $40. In round two, or the current round of applications, the applicant is allowed to use the federal funds toward their local match amount. So if the total project costs are $100, then that reimbursement rate is applied to that whole $100. So in this scenario, the state reimbursement would be $50 and the local match would be $50, 20 of which would be federal funds. And then here's just a reminder of the details of the application deadline. So districts are to submit their applications by December 31, 2023 into Core CT. Each municipality should have a Core CT administrator, and this is usually the town clerk or an administrator in the town office. And this person can create a user account for the superintendent. If a district doesn't know who their municipal Core CT administrator is, they can email our DAS Grants Administration Office, and the email address will be on the next slide. But I also want to share that we recognize that only the superintendents have access to the application in Core CT, but other members from the municipality might be working to help pull the application together. So in Appendix A of our program guidance document, we list all of the application questions that are in Core CT. So a district can review them all before even logging into Core CT. And then this is just the last slide. If there are any additional questions, districts are encouraged to email our DAS Grants Administration Office. All information on the grant program, including this full webinar, the program guidance, FAQs, and questions that we've already received to date and have answered, are available on our HVAC grants website. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you all for the opportunity to share this information.
Thank you both so much. So maybe with that, we'll open it up for discussion about the program so far, and then also in terms of support for districts applying to the program. All right, Matt Cole. Great to see you, Matt.
Thank you, Representative. Nice to see you as well. Thank you very much both for the presentation. Forgive me for not addressing you by your titles. I didn't have a chance to write them down as I was taking some notes. But I have two questions, one for Eleanor and one for Melissa. Eleanor, during the initial round of grant funding, it was stated to a lot of the stakeholders that the reason the timeline was so condensed was that there was a time limitation on the ARPA funds. And so I'm wondering if that has changed and why the bonding dollars were used first as opposed to the ARPA dollars being used first in the process. And then my second question would be to Melissa. And the question is whether the grant funding can be used to fund the ventilation verification surveys that are required per statute. Thank you.
Hi, Matt, and thanks so much for that question. I'll do the best I can to answer the first portion and then pass it over to Melissa. So the question regarding the ARPA dollars, yes, that is correct. There are timelines associated with the ARPA dollars. Those are, federal requirements, and they are still in place. So districts definitely need to be aware of those timelines if they are the recipients of federal funds. And we understand also that districts will be, there was the request, obviously, and the change in the legislation to permit districts to utilize their own federal funds for the local match piece. So I think our thought was that those districts who are intending to use their federal funds for the local match piece would be aware of those timelines and already planning to work within them. So that is what we were thinking with regard to the federal funds.
Thank
Melissa?
I'll take it next, Eleanor. So just to repeat your question, Matt, it was whether the grant funding can be used to fund the ventilation verification survey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so honestly, I don't have an answer for you right now. I'd have to review the out of scope activities and work with our Office of Grants Administration team. So I can get back to you on whether or not that would be allowable under the grant. And I could share that answer with this whole group.
Thank you.
All right. John? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Kushner, did you want to jump in on that?
Yes, I just wanted to mention to DAS that I believe that was what we were told last year, that they could be used for the surveys. So I think that's a pretty important clarification that we need, because we know that these surveys that are going to be required in the statute now are going to be costly. And so the ability to put in for assistance for doing the surveys, which are a critical piece of how we get to where we want to be with an understanding of the entire state and every district and what their needs are. So I think that will help advise us for future grant programs, which I hope will materialize in the future as well, continue as they have been. And so I know we haven't rolled out the 5-year, the surveys that people are going to need to do, but it's going to happen very soon. So hopefully we can get clarification on that quickly.
Thanks, Senator Kushner. And just in response to that, I believe that the statute for this grant program says that the purpose of it is for replacement, upgrade, or installation of heating, ventilation, or air conditioning systems or other improvements to indoor air quality. And so we would have to talk with our team as to whether or not that falls under those categories. I believe not, but I don't want to give an incorrect answer, so we can get that clarification for you and for this group.
And the timeliness of that is that we would be in a position, hopefully, to then, if we need to modify the statute, be able to do it next session. Thanks.
All right, John. Oh, you're on mute, John.
Here we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. First off, I want to thank everyone for their involvement. We were very successful in getting a major grant. I just want to update a couple of our experiences with that. First, overall, the process for getting out to bid is, I think, very good. I want to give CHRO some praise for keeping their side moving, and DAS for kind of stepping a little bit out of their normal role and letting prevailing wages and set-asides be handled by CHRO. They've been very good to work with. So it helped us move faster than I think any other way through the normal school building committee process would work. So that was a success. We are having some issues with Core Connect, as was mentioned. We have 2 separate agencies, and the superintendent's office has to do some of the work, and the town has to do some of the work. And on the town side, we're okay. but there's some issues where our superintendent's office is having some issues. So I think additional looking and smoothing that process out and who kind of there's a trade-off. The applications for grants go into the superintendent's office, and the administration of grants becomes a town office issue. So I think there needs to be some further discussions on that, because we can't do some of the things we need to do to administer the grant. So we're still working on that. And I think I was glad to hear that there's discussion on it, but I think there's some more tweaking that needs to happen. Third thing I want to mention is that as in any construction project, you run into some surprises. When we started increasing the capacity for air conditioning, ultimately we ended up, when the final design was, had to go for a transformer upgrade, which is significant expense. But more importantly, Eversource has told us there could be a 3-year time frame to get transformers in. So I've tried to work through our contacts at Eversource and said, don't worry, we'll try to work with you. But I just wanted people to be aware that there are some things that are going to be way outside the normal purview of supply chain issues. It's not just the big chillers and the air vents and everything else. If you need to do major electrical upgrades, it could be a real issue. So we may need some state hinting to Eversource and other companies to work with the towns and schools on this as a top priority. So far, we've been getting a good kind of, yeah, we'll try to help you, but we'll see. And the last thing I want to mention is that kind of the bidding process, we only attracted 4 firms, and this was an $11 million project, so significant. Only 2 bids came in. And we extended the bid deadlines twice because they were concerned about getting things to us and getting prices. But to only get 2 bids is kind of stunning. So we have selected the lowest bidder, what seemed to be qualified, and we have that into CHRO to do the follow-up work to make sure that they have their affirmative action plan and all those other things. So we're at that stage, but we have lost already about 4 or 5 months that we didn't count on through these processes and the bidding extensions. So we're going to still try. We still think we can do it, but we're getting scared. And we will have to do construction while school is in session, clearly. So I just want to give you a little update on one of the first towns. I don't know who else has gone out to bid and have done there, but it may be good to check base with the towns that were awarded to see where they are and what things they have, because it might be able to tweak a few things between the grant award and the bidding process for the next round. So thank you again. We're excited about this. It will make a significant issue to our high school. And this fall reminded us of the need for air conditioning. And unfortunately, we had to keep our kids in school because the bus drivers were on strike. So the world treats you in strange ways sometimes. So thank you.
John, thanks so much for sharing that experience of your process. It's so helpful. I know here in Fairfield, our folks are also struggling with the timeline due to a lot of supply chain shortages. So I think you're not alone, but it's really helpful to hear all the really specific places in the process where you ran into some hiccups. So I appreciate that context. Jan?
Yes, thank you, Representative Leeper. I just want to thank the Deputy Commissioner and the Director for this. It's the second time I'm hearing it, and it really is very helpful. The communication this time around has been really good, and I'm going into this process while it's a tight timeline, less anxious. So I just want to say thank you. And I do want to reiterate what John said. Here in Saybrook, we went out for a project that we're looking for some reimbursement. We have 2 more projects that have to happen. And the wait period is exactly the same experience, from chillers to wires to everything, to the boxes that you put all the electrical in. And then the work with Eversource is very, very delayed. I think that we went out before everybody started out, but now that we're all going to be going out looking for the same vendors, I think the bidding process is only going to be that much harder. That will naturally drive the price up. And I told this committee last year that a $1.2 million project pre-COVID became a $1.8 million project post-COVID. And currently we are only able to have it in our elementary school because we were able to rent a couple of generators that are sitting on pads in the playground, because Eversource could not get us hooked up in time. And they're hoping, again, same message, we'll work with you. They're hoping to get us hooked up in the spring, but no promises. So I know to what degree this committee can have an impact on timeline, on making exceptions so that we can do this the right way the first time, instead of having to piece it together and spend more money in each municipality, would be greatly appreciated. I'm happy to work towards that end.
Thanks, Jan. That's really helpful. Lou?
Good afternoon. Thanks, Melissa, so much for the overview. And thank you to the agency in general. We recognize that you all made some pretty significant changes and tried to provide a little bit more flexibility and coordination. And it's good to hear, from some of the folks on this call that those are really making a difference. We had what we thought was a very productive meeting over the summer, and we look forward to having another one here in just a few days with the agency. Put forward some recommendations at that time about ways that we thought we might be able to enhance this program, make it a little bit more user-friendly and a little more accessible. So I'm just wondering, one of the things that we had put forward was an interest in seeing the agency provide some feedback for applicants that submit incomplete applications. And we recognize that some of the projects that were submitted during the first round didn't get funded. Some of them only had like one no on that rubric, whether it be because of they were missing a cost estimate, or because there were no technical drawings, there was no building committee individual pieces like that, when they had really kind of checked the rest of the boxes that they need. And we had asked if the agency would be able to kind of follow up directly with some of those applicants during the second round to let them know, hey, your application looks good, there's this one piece that's missing. So I'm just wondering if you all have had conversations about that and how you plan to kind of address those moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Lou. So our agency has reached out to all districts that were declined in the first round to encourage them to reapply with their updated application materials. If districts have reached out from the first round with specific questions about their deficiencies, we've put our best effort forward. Our Office of Grants Administration team has put their best effort forward to respond with additional information about those deficiencies. So if a district had a question about a cost estimate and they reached out to the team via email, they're working to respond to those questions.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks, Melissa. Senator?
My screen froze for a minute. Sorry. I think one of the things that we talked about the other day that would be helpful too, and I think would be helpful for the folks in the working group, is to get a list of the districts that were funded, the amount they were funded, the project and the amount. And then maybe fairly soon, a list of those that have applied already, so that we can maybe do some outreach where we know it needs to be done. And included would be a good measure would be the schools that were, the districts that were denied also. So we can follow up on those. I know my district was denied, one of my school districts was denied, and I would love to go back and check in with them on that.
Of course, we can aim to provide that information this week.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is sort of a discussion around potential training opportunities. And this is to explore how we can better support more districts to be applying for these funds. And DIS has been trying really hard to be supportive for districts applying, recognizing not every district really has someone on staff who can take on these laborious grant projects. And so they are trying to partner with our districts as best as possible. So I think we just want to open it up for feedback from you all on how we can best streamline the training for in-district folks and the coordination between the districts and DIS to ensure districts feel like they have the tools and support to be applying for these grants. So if anyone has thoughts on that, and I appreciate John and Jan both sharing, and you guys are examples of districts that, you know, are really leading the charge on this work, but we know we have other districts that are struggling to kind of get these applications off the ground. And so if you have any thoughts on that, or anyone else, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We'd love to hear. And also I want to make sure DIS has the opportunity just to share with everyone what they have done in creating a manual for the application process. John.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. Just a thought, especially for the smaller districts that may not have specific talent, whether there could be, and it may require legislation or the finding of some other funds, but through the school district like EastCon or CREC, they often have people that are trained in facilities, because there's a technical level of the grant application where you really need to have somebody on board that has some technical skills in heating, ventilation. And not all schools can afford that, and either you're contracted out to engineers, but it may be that the state could develop in-house coordination through the regional school agencies that could provide those services, as they do many other services to the school districts.
That's my turn to unmute. Thanks, John. And I don't know, Melissa or Deputy Commissioner, if you guys want to respond to that. I just want, we can have like a free flowing conversation here if that's helpful. And not to put you on the spot, I just want to make sure if you wanted to say anything, you have the opportunity. And if not, Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually going to recommend that. And on a somewhat more simple way to approach it could be office hours at different points in the process. So as people hit different points, because very often with a grant, we have no dedicated people to grants in our district. And very often with a grant, you find that the questions that are being answered in the preliminary stages, you're not ready for the answers. But as you get into the grant, that's when you're ready for them. So something as simple as regular hours at different stages might be very helpful. They don't need to be lengthy. They could be an hour long, offered at a couple of different times, and that would give people an opportunity to have someone to go to. It might even cut down on some of the phone calls and the questions that we're constantly peppering the state with.
That sounds like a great suggestion. Thanks, Jan. Lou?
Thank you, Representative. Yeah, just a quick one. And this, I think, may be somewhat obvious, but I think it's important to kind of build upon what exists whenever possible, and recognizing that several years ago, the state, Department of Public Health in particular, made tools for schools a priority for all of the districts, and actually had created some infrastructure around that issue with respect to supporting tools for schools committees. for each of the local and regional boards of education. And so that's something that I think makes a lot of sense. I think to the extent that these agencies are able to partner together to provide some direct, not necessarily oversight, but at the very least some training for the school districts in terms of how they should go about not only developing their tools for schools committee, assuming they aren't already doing this. Some of them may be, most of them are likely not. But also just kind of, creating a framework for how districts might, utilize those resources, whether it be the school grounds personnel, tools for schools committees, labor management, health and safety committee is another one that could be kind of leveraged in this process. So a little bit of guidance as to how schools might actually go about putting together their 1-year inspection process, we think would be really meaningful and would go a long way.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you.
Matt?
I'll kind of piggyback on what Lou said and take that to the 5-year. A lot of the questions that we've been talking about with DAS are directly related to a grant program. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that the projects that will be implemented through this grant program are ones that are discovered through our 1-year surveys and our 5-year surveys. So I think to piggyback on what Lou said, it's important to make sure that those are done properly. So rather than try and find someone who can be a consultant for how to write a grant about an HVAC project, we first have to find out what that HVAC project is going to be. And that comes from the 1-year testing and the 5-year testing. The 5-year testing includes an engineer report that has the recommendations for things that should happen in municipalities to bring their spaces within code compliance. That's what starts a project down the road. Those findings say, hey, we have to replace this air handling unit. Well, now we can start to get an engineer on board for a municipality and say, okay, let's put together a project that would do that and some proposals that we could utilize to submit a grant application. So I think that what Lou said about training, right, also goes with the 5-year program. I certainly know that DAS doesn't determine how those dollars are spent, but I think it would be wise for the group to look at apportioning some of that money toward making sure that there's people in place to do the annual testing, to make sure that the 5-year testing can be put through as part of the grant program. I know that you had said for improvement of IAQ, and that was the question about whether or not the ventilation assessments did that. I could tell you through firsthand experience, that's the crux of it, right? This is how we identify what projects need to go. It's the most cost-effective way, rather than a municipality saying, oh, let's just upgrade everything. Really, these things are what focus the efforts onto something that's going to make a critical impact in improving indoor air quality. So I'll leave that there.
Can I ask a question for Lou or Matt? Who, through both the tools for schools or the survey components, who in your mind is the right person to be leading like a training for those folks conducting those assessments? Assuming you don't have the expertise within district, like where are folks looking to get that training from?
Maybe some resources available from coming from the federal level, but it's going to be limited. There's going to need to be some real kind of fleshing out of those priorities that needs to happen. And I believe that in the past, DPH has done some of this. Ivan can correct me or elaborate if I'm off base, but DPH does have some historical background on those issues.
There was funding a while back. It's been quite a few years now. So yeah, we had essentially one position that was fully state funded for quite a long time, and then once the funding was removed, we weren't able to kind of provide that same kind of level of instruction. At that time, we were able to basically send someone out who would, try to basically get to every single school district, over time. So they kind of a map where they were increasing the number of schools that were, doing the Tools for Schools program, and they're doing some on-site instruction, but there just isn't the capacity for that currently.
I could add that Tools for Schools used to have a lot of people that were on a team that would perform those annual surveys. And a lot of them are still in districts. They just haven't done it for a while. Our legislation has mandated that they do it every year starting this year. And a lot of districts just don't know what they have to do. And certainly, I think it's worthy to explore some sort of online training component rather than one person that's going to go around to different districts. And if a program could be put together that all districts could take advantage of, it seems like that might be the most cost-effective way to quickly push out the training for something that has to be done fairly soon.
I appreciate that. I just want to, I guess for my own clarification, it's almost like we're talking about three now different sort of things that folks need to be trained on, right? Because how to conduct the Tools for Schools assessments, how to complete the both annual and 5-year evaluations, and then also how to initiate and complete the grant application process for the funds. Those are actually three separate things that folks will need some training and probably ongoing support to conduct within our districts. Am I understanding that correctly from what I just heard from you all?
Yes, I can say that for the 5-year program, that's done by certified trained professionals, whether testing and balancing person, an indoor air quality hygienist, or industrial hygienist, or a mechanical engineer per the statute. Really what's needed for the 5-year is the awareness that's pushed out to all the municipalities that it has to be done. I like to tell people the only thing you need to know about IAQ is my phone number, but
I actually really appreciate you reminding us of that about the 5-year. Thanks, Matt. Senator Kushner, did you want to weigh in on this? And Leonard, I want to just recognize, I see your hand there also.
I just wanted to mention, thank you, Matt, for bringing that up, because that really goes to the third point, which is enforcement, the third bullet there. I think that districts do need to be reminded that they have to do the annual report starting this year. And I'm not sure whose responsibility it is currently to notify the districts, whether that would be DAS or DPH. I know DPH had some involvement in the past, and so I think it would be great to sort that out and then make sure people know about it through some kind of communication early on. And I don't know if you guys have already been talking about that or have a plan for that. That would be great to know. And also, and Matt, I'm glad you're there because I can't remember and I don't have the statute in front of me. When is the 5-year reporting begin?
The current legislation pushed that 1 year to January 1 of 2025.
That's what I thought.
So there's been many municipalities that have already completed it over this summer. The remainder of them will more than likely need to use next summer. I think in one of the upcoming meetings, we should certainly talk about that time frame and how realistic it is.
And just to finish my thought on this, I remember that I think it was DPH put out a report either last year or the year before, some data that was supposed to be submitted by each district. And I remember looking through that data and seeing holes in it where districts had not reported. And that too goes to the question of enforcement. What do we do when districts don't comply? So those are, and do we need to, do we need to be more specific about it? So those are some of the questions I still have that we should be thinking about, especially over the next few months as we prepare for next year, the legislative session, if there's something more we have to add to the statute.
Thanks, Senator. With that, I'm going to actually formally hand it over to Senator Kushner. And because I have to run, but thank you everyone for your contributions, and I will, thankfully these are recorded, watch this next several minutes that I am going to miss today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jen, and good to see you as always. And so, Leonard, you've been patiently waiting.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So what I'm hearing is a compliance aspect, and how do we support the districts? I'm not sure how a lot of the districts work. I know in my district in Windsor, the town owns the buildings. We're responsible just for major maintenance. Everything else is under a CIP. And we have a public building commission within our town that manages all of our buildings. So a lot of that work is done and is the responsibility of the town. And as a school district, we go through the town. So what I would like to see is what other districts have the same type of concept. And if there's going to be some type of compliance and or punitive action being taken, I think that the training also needs to be down to the town level as well, to let them know that this is coming. And a lot of the work and testing and stuff that goes on in some of these buildings are actually performed and authorized by the town through the town facilities manager, working hand in hand with the district's facility manager. So there's certain things a district may not have full control over. And we want to make sure that we protect those districts that don't have full autonomy over their buildings, and that they're supported through their local entities without the state, lack of a better expression, pushing their thumb on them as perceived that if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think this goes more than the districts. We have to support the actual towns and municipalities as well, to make sure everybody understands the true intent of the legislation, how to apply for it, and what's truly expected, and then iron out who's exactly responsible for what. I think if we lay that out carefully for everybody, I think it will alleviate a lot of confusion.
I appreciate those comments, because I know my district is one also where the city is responsible for the buildings. And I think that point is well taken, that we should be certain that whoever is doing the notification and the letter and the communications is clearly informing both parties. And probably in every instance, even where the school district may be responsible for the buildings, it's good for the towns or cities to know, because it may come down to some funding questions as well. So I think that's just good practice. So appreciate your comments. Joni.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Leonard said, because I did speak with my superintendent from West Haven and our building facilities manager. And one of the things that they're very concerned about is getting the financial support from the city, getting our city council to approve the funding. I think if we can put something together to kind of present to our city councils, in addition to just our Board of Ed, because our Board of Ed, according to my superintendent, they're having difficulty even kind of relaying the seriousness and making our city council aware that, hey, this is not really an option. It's going to be enforced by law very soon. So we either do it now when we have funding support, or you're going to be footing the bill on your own several years down the road. So that's just some feedback I got from my superintendent.
That's very helpful. And so maybe, and I know that when we were talking before with DAS, I know Eleanor and Melissa, you are working on the format of the reporting. And I think you had mentioned to us that you're close to having the first year form finalized, and that you still are working on the 5 year. Is that correct?
Yes, thanks, Senator. So we are at the very initial stages of working on both the 1 year and the 5 year reporting form. I know that we have received some feedback from Matt Cole. So Matt, thank you so much for that. And we would welcome any other feedback from stakeholders who have thoughts on those forms or ideas about what they might look like. Our goal is to put those forms on our website so that districts can fill them out online. And ultimately, our tentative plan is to have that information fed into the Connecticut Open Data Portal so that everybody has access to to the results of those forms 24/7. However, like I said, we're at very early stages there, and we hope to be able to report out more details on those forms at a future meeting.
I apologize for all the coughing. That's why I wanted Jen to chair the meeting, because I've had a cough for a month. No COVID, just a cough. But I apologize.
Sorry.
That information is really helpful, and I do think obviously that the 1 year inspections need to happen, the tools for schools, very soon. So I think letting people know about that will be very helpful. And it does seem like DAS is positioned to do this. But I do want to mention that I believe, Ivan, that DPH also had a whole focus on tools for schools at one time. And so I would imagine that you guys need to coordinate on the actual format, the formatting of the reports, so that we can make sure that we're covering every base that we need to. Okay, I see John's. Ivan, did you want to comment on that at all?
Just the idea of how to make sure towns are fully aware of their shared responsibility, because a lot of what we do in Connecticut is not clear cut. They're all shared, which means you have to do a team approach. And what would be helpful is to raise the awareness of the municipality's responsibilities through whoever the appropriate state agency is, or a team of agents, offering to present to the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities or the Council of Small Towns. CCM has monthly LegCom meetings, they call them, legislative committee meetings, where they always have a guest speaker for half an hour, 45 minutes. It'd be a good opportunity to engage those two groups to say, this is coming real fast, the 1 year, and the 5 years very fast too. That there has to be money in this if you, especially if you have to engage outside engineering or technical review in really this coming year's budget, which is being developed now. And yes, every town does things slightly different. Some will say this is a board responsibility and they'll put it in a capital budget, and then the town may not fund it. So there has to be a shared awareness, and that has to happen sooner than later. So I think those are two good ways to spread the word.
Thank you for those suggestions, very helpful. And we might even want to coordinate with a working group, maybe if DAS and DPH take up this suggestion and go to the CCM and cost meetings, maybe somebody from the working group could join as well with you to explain sort of the process of how we got here legislatively. Be happy to do that. I'm sure Jen would be happy as well. So great ideas. I think I saw Leonard's hand go up. Nope, it's down again. Anything else on this topic? I think we've covered quite a bit. We are going to try and, it was hard to get our meetings together during the summer. I think everyone needed a break after the intensity of the session. I'm sure it's like that every year, but we will try and get another meeting in relatively soon so we can continue hearing back. And it would be particularly helpful. I do want to say that it's been, oh great, Betsy just said that they would love to have somebody, happy to have someone come to the meeting. So let's try and make that happen and coordinate with you, Betsy. And I do want to thank DAS because you guys have really put a lot of muscle into this. Clearly thinking through all of the things that were raised last year about the program. And, it was a lot to take on, and you guys have been really great partners in it and keeping me and Jen really informed. So as you get more and more things, like when you get the reporting developed, again, please let us know so we can schedule a follow-up meeting to this so that we can keep this ball rolling. That would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those kind words. And we really appreciate the support of this task force as well. And we'll be sure to keep everybody posted as we move forward.
That sounds great. So unless there's something else for today, is it, agenda, then I think we've completed our work here today, and we will look forward to seeing you all in a few weeks. Great. Thanks so much, everybody. Good meeting.